what happened in your childhood? Can you explain it to us?
Yeah, it was an interesting childhood because it was a mix of being incredibly well supported and a mix of having overcome some big challenges and obstacles. So I'll start, at birth. I was born with a fairly rare medical condition. I was born with what's called an imperforate anus, which means I was born without the actual anal opening, and I was born without a sphincter muscle, which really meant for the rest of my life that I would be incontinent. So I had to wear diapers till about the age of 13. The early years wasn't a big deal. Like any other child, you wear diapers, and it wasn't an issue whatsoever. But certainly my parents, they had to deal with it more than I had to, in those first couple of years, because there was a lot of complications. There was a lot of trips to the emergency room. I had a colostomy at the time, which is when they put an incision in you and they take out some of your intestine. They actually cut it and then put a tube on it so you can actually, go to the washroom through that. So I had that for, I think, about the first 8 months until all the surgery was healed and I didn't need it anymore. So they removed that after a while. But, my mom told me horrific stories how, it would slip out of the tube inside me, and she would call the doctors and say, hey, you know what, it fell off. And they say, oh, don't worry, the other one will kick in and it'll be fine. Well, that wasn't the case. I actually had fecal matter going inside my body, and so I had a horrible infection, and my mom and dad had to take me to emergency, and that was really stressful on them.
When was when was the time that you really realized, I'm different from other kids? When was it that I'm different?
Yeah, I would probably say grade 1. I mean, kindergarten, a lot of children are still, potty training and wearing diapers and not, so that wasn't a big deal. But certainly as I got into grade 1 and grade 2, I started to realize that, I was the only kid wearing diapers, and, my parents had to approach the school and explain the situation. The school was kind enough to allow me to use the staff washroom, so I had my own key. I called it the golden key to the staff washroom. So, I had special privileges. I didn't have to raise my hand in class to go to the washroom. I was just welcome to leave. I would change in the bathroom stall, and at gym class, so I wouldn't necessarily always, at any time change in front of the rest of the children. So that got kids talking, right? Hey, why aren't you going to the washroom with the rest of us in the public washroom? Why are you going, why do you have the special privilege of not having to raise your hand and going out? So as kids started to talk, and kids are curious, and I had my accidents, which were difficult to take because the kids started realizing that I had an issue, and they don't think of it logically like you do as an adult. So that posed a lot of problems for me. I got bullied pretty relentlessly at school.
Yes, so when you get bullied, how do you feel? Do you think that, like you said, by experience, I also used to get bullied when I was younger because I don't come from here, but how do you feel? Do you feel like resentment to the other kids? Do you feel like to yourself?
Yeah, I think there's a mix of personal guilt, where you put that on yourself, and you feel sorry for yourself sometimes, right? Why me? Why did this happen to me? Because I never knew of anyone else that suffered from the same medical condition. One thing that dawned on me, and I'm surprised it took me so long, but it was into my late 30s, maybe even early 40s, it sort of dawned on me, like, not one medical professional during that journey of, finally when I could understand, when someone could sit down and explain to me what the problem was, not one person from the medical community said, hey, by the way, you're not the only person that has this.
No way.
There are thousands of people around the world that have this. As a matter of fact, when it comes to urinary incontinence, there's millions, hundreds of millions, right? But I think that would have been really, really reassuring. And when I tell the story to medical professionals, and I've toured quite a bit now speaking to medical professionals, for them sometimes it kind of clicks and like, oh, hey, that's a great idea, right? So I wish that would have happened. It didn't for me. So it was a lot of confusion. When you're bullied, you suffer from anxiety. I suffered panic attacks. I had a lot of depression. Wanted to be invisible, There were times when I spent a lot of time alone. And, I had a great imagination, so I didn't necessarily, I tended to be in the moment when I was alone. I grew up in a great spot. We had a beautiful house that backed onto a creek, so I spent hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours in that creek. I mean, it was stretched miles and miles.
Yes, that was your space.
Yeah, it was my space. I was in nature. I always loved nature growing up. It was a place where, if I had an accident, no one's around, right? I'm in the middle of nature, and nature doesn't care. You know what I mean? If you smell, doesn't matter. Nature doesn't care. So I felt very comfortable like that. And with my imagination, I pretended I was going through the Amazon jungle, or I was a stuntman. We actually had a lot of steep hills that went down to the creek, so I pretended I was like a mountain climber, and I had a wonderful time. But it was tough because I also loved people. I always did.
Yes.
And I was super energetic. Crazy amount of energy.
Do you fear going, like when you were a kid, do you fear going to school, like a Sunday night and say, tomorrow I have to go to school? Do you fear?
It was, I would lie to my parents that I had, I also suffered from a lot of stomach issues. So I'd get a lot of stomach cramps, a lot of diarrhea, and when you suffer from incontinence and you have diarrhea, it's a terrible mix. I lied quite a bit and pretended that I was sick so I didn't have to face people the next day, to face the kids the next day. Because, like there were lunch hours where I'd come home and the kids would throw me off the side of the hill, down to the creek. They would beat me up. It wasn't fun.